Ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to the Daniel Tolson live stream. Today I'm joined by Andrew Wind from freestylefeet.com.au. So now you've had a lot of experience out there on the sporting scene. Andrew, you've competed on the world stage in cross-country skiing. You've competed in cycling, kayaking, and swimming. What did you learn about your body during these experiences?
I learned mostly that you can push it only so far before you've got to give it some respect. The early days, I pushed and pushed and pushed and pushed, and I found we all have limits. And whilst it's fun to explore those upper ends, you've got to respect those.
How far can you push your body before it stops?
Way further than you think.
I was training not a physiotherapist, but a personal trainer in the UK. And he said to me that most people stop at about 40%. Now, that was his opinion on it. And he said, so the mind tells us to stop really, really early, but the body can go much further. What's your opinion there? How far can we push it?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think we can push it to up around the mid to high 90s, but you can't just go straight there. You've got to teach your body that it can cope with a lot more than we think it can.
Mm. Through your sporting experiences with cross-country skiing, cycling, kayaking, and swimming, what do you know about your body today that you didn't know back then?
Yeah, so I'm carrying a lot of scars from those days, but I think the recovery is probably the secret there. It's for an athlete, it's really easy to push, and we all know telling an athlete to rest is the hardest thing. And I've learned that balancing that hard work and rest is really the secret to getting a lot more performance.
Mm. One of the things I've heard from one of my clients, he says, Daniel, all these gurus telling you got to get up at 3 o'clock in the morning, have 4 to 5 hours sleep, and that's all you need. But then I read the books and it says billionaires on average sleep 7 to 8 hours. Self-made millionaires sleep on average 6 to 7, and most people who are under the poverty line sleep less than 5 hours. So to fully recover your body as an expert in this field, how much time do people need to rest for? How long should they be sleeping for?
Yeah, great questions. Area I've researched a fair bit, and relates to physio and sports injuries as well, in that if you are getting less than 8 hours of sleep, then your injury risk goes up significantly. So there's some fantastic research from the NBA, and they tracked them closely as to how much they were sleeping and looked at their injury risk. And short answer is 7.5 to 8 hours is ideal, but the quality is also important.
Mm. We were talking offline before, and I said that during COVID, I'm the healthiest today than I ever have been. And I have a great routine where I'm not traveling internationally, so there's no jet lag. There's no extended periods of awakeness. But when I'm going to sleep here, jumping to bed 10, wake up at 7, and getting the best sleep ever. And I've started to pray to God. I never did before, but I started to pray and say, thank you for COVID, because I'm healthier than I've ever been.
Yeah, nice. That you've probably added a few years to your life by doing that, I'd say.
Well, I look younger. I used to be cabin crew, and we would not get a lot of sleep. And I get these big grey circles under my eyes. And when I stopped flying around the world professionally, for about 6 months, I was sleeping up to 12 and 13 hours a day just to get my health back. And I started to look into this, and what I learned was that I think it's after about 3 or 4 years of professional flying, you're no longer allowed to donate your organs in Australia. And this is because of the damage that it does to the internals, because you're not sleeping, your circadian rhythm's going out. We knew the two most dangerous times of flying was about 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning and about 2 and 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you were landing at 2 or 3 in the afternoon, you had to be really alert. And the same thing for those times in the morning, because we should have been in our deeper sleep cycles, but at 2 or 3, we should have been having a little siesta. So in the airline training, they always prepared us for this. Afternoon takeoffs and landings, be ready. early morning flights and takeoffs, be ready on your jump seat.
Interesting. Very interesting. So, do you think you were paying back the sleep debt that you accumulated when you stopped flying and slept all that time?
Absolutely. It was sleep debt. It was incredible. I had to adjust, being Australian. My biological clock is definitely set to Australian time, Eastern Standard Time. I lived in the Middle East and that became the new clock, but it took a long time to get into that rhythm. But then every time we went from Dubai to the UK, you'd get out of rhythm, you'd come back, and then you'd fly to somewhere like Singapore or Malaysia, and the clock would change again. And so once I left Dubai, I then moved to Taiwan. And so inside of my body, it was all a mess. And so now Taiwan is my biological clock. But it took a long time to become used to it. I had to adapt to the food. So the food was different in my stomach. It took a lot more time to process. But however, we have very consistent eating time here. And I believe that's contributed to better health because in the morning, breakfast, 7 a.m. religiously, lunchtime, 11:30, dinner time, 5 p.m. Just consistent. I've never had that before.
Yeah, very
So
good.
definitely a big one. Now, you've taken your sporting achievements and you've also turned it into a business. And your business is Freestyle Feet. And I want to really check this out and I want to have a look at what you've created here. So, how did Freestyle Feet come about?
Yeah, well, it's I've been a physio for 20 years now, and I've been 10 years of running a fairly big sports medicine clinic in Melbourne, and this is something I started 12 months ago because my final skiing race, I hurt my ankle, and my ski got hooked into a fence, and it got sort of twisted, and I saw some of the top sort of physios and sports doctors, and I couldn't get a diagnosis in my foot, and it's still to this day is just not quite right. So I started, like a lot of stories start out, looking for my own solutions, and realized that as health practitioners, we're not amazing with this part of the body. We find it a little confusing, and so there's also not sort of simple solutions. So these toe spreaders are our key product. We've got a few others in there as well. But we're on a mission to really help solve foot and ankle problems simply and as much as you can on your own.
One of the things I learned a couple of years ago, Andrew, I had a very sedentary lifestyle. So, I had a bad office chair and it was from IKEA. That was the first mistake. And so I upgraded to a really expensive chair and it was about 2,500 US dollars. But I was sitting there for 12 and 13 hours a day. And then I started to get back pain. So I was going to do all this work on my back, but my feet started to hurt. And as soon as I saw this ball here,
Yeah,
it triggered a memory that I started to fix my feet and my back problem disappeared. So,
yeah.
what is I know feet are important, but just how important are they for the rest of our body?
I look. It's. I mean, we're standing on them. It's our. And assuming we've got 2 feet, 2 legs, then it's our base of support. It's our connection to the ground, and everything from that starts off stacking up poorly or non-optimally, I guess is the right way. Imagine um, the game, the Jenga game. When you're trying to pull the blocks out and balance it all, and the tower gets a little bit wobbly there, but you never pull one out from the base. You work your way in, so it's so important for our whole structure and function, and it's just we aren't most of us aren't tuned into our feet. We're not aware when there's tension there until it becomes a problem. So I personally think they're right up there with the most important parts of the body.
I started paying attention to my feet last week because as I was scrolling through Facebook, this new game came up. And you take this metal thing and a loop and you push it into the foot and it pushes out what looks like to be pimples or something in the bottom of the feet. And I thought to myself, when was the last time I actually looked at the bottom of my feet? It probably was the last time I had a splinter. And so I stopped and I had a look at my foot, but before that, I hadn't paid a lot of attention to it. Is this common or am I just abnormal?
No, it's really because that's hard to see. You've got to have good hip flexibility to be able to even kind of pull your foot up and see that. And obviously, you see kids do that no problems. My 7-year-old still somehow can suck his toe, which I'm not sure I'd recommend. But after 15 or 20, I guess when we start to maybe get curious, you start to lose that flexibility, and so it's hard to see the damn things.
Mm, mm. So you mentioned the feet spreaders here before, and I just want to bring them back up to the screen. What's the purpose of these, and what were they invented for?
Yeah, so they gently create space between the toes. So wearing modern footwear, which most of us wear, they tend to squash our feet together, and that causes all host of problems. So the most common one is the bunion, the dreaded bunion, where the big toe falls out of alignment and you get a large lump. But there's a whole host of other issues that all start from being squashed into really tight shoes and carrying a lot of tension in our feet and not allowing them to spread and use them how they were designed. So what these do is they're active, and they're one of the few products in the world that you can comfortably walk around in. So you stick them on, you exercise in them, you do your Pilates class in them, you just wear them around the house, and you'll start to change the structure of your feet.
So, for somebody who would need something like this, what would be the early signs and symptoms that they should start to check on their feet? What would be the first things they start to notice, and what would lead them towards this?
Yeah, so prevention's so much better than the cure. So anyone who has sore, tired, aching feet at the end of the day, then they absolutely should start looking at this now, because once the alignment of the toes starts to go out or gets squashed, it's much, much, much harder to pull it back. It can we separate bunions into sort of mild and moderate and severe, and the severe ones need an operation, but mild can easily be corrected with strengthening and exercises and these toe spreaders.
So, through your own experience in sports, you've created this. And how's it impacting people's lives? And what are some of the transformations that they're starting to see?
Yeah, I've had just literally last week someone come in and in tears, a patient come in here. So I still treat a couple of days a week here in the clinic, and I had someone come in and in tears, and I said, okay, our plan hasn't gone well, and she said, no, 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 it's you've changed my life, and I said, with what? And she said, with these little silicon toe spreaders you recommended a few weeks ago. So it can make quite profound changes. And if your feet are so sore you can't walk around, then it really impacts all aspects of your life.
It's amazing. Now, you've had a successful sports career. You've been through your own injuries, but you've also built a very successful business with 25 employees. What did you learn from sports, and how have you applied that into your business?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I think about that all the time. I think the key thing is working hard, and you would know, setting up a business from scratch, you've got to be willing to work really hard. You need to have a passion, and you need to be training or working day in, day out in the early days, and that's what being an athlete does, is setting a goal, having a passion, and then being consistently willing to work harder than everyone else to make it happen. But I guess the second part of that question is that I think that also gets you into a trap, because you're perhaps more willing to work harder than all your employees, which is not necessarily how you want it to be. So also needing to unlearn that a little bit and not expect that of all the staff has also been a big lesson.
The sports that you played, Andrew, were they team sports or were they individual sports?
Yeah, I see where you're heading with this. They were individual sports, and that was actually a source of frustration for me. I love team sports, I really do, but I would get extremely frustrated that I would be willing to push myself harder than a teammate, or willing to run myself faster into the ground. So I found that was a frustration then. Interestingly, I still find that a frustration now.
As soon as you mentioned it, I was thinking, what about me in business? I've always done individual sports. So, wakeboarding, water skiing, surfing, bodyboarding, these are all individual sports. And so, as I've built my business, I've had to learn to work within a team because I've done so few team sports. And it was a big transition for me because I'm aggressive. I want to win. And sometimes I look at others and they don't have the passion and the drive as I do. But that's not good or bad, right or wrong. But it's a frustrator for me. And I was learning from a successful businessman in the UK. The first thing he said to me, he said, Daniel, how can a man with no brain earn more money than a brain surgeon? I said, I looked at him, I said, I'm not bald. And he said, no, I'm bald. And I said, okay. And I said, well, what's the next thing you're going to tell me? He said, Daniel, he says, my 100% is not as powerful as 1,000 people's 1%. I didn't get it. I said, can you loop around and tell me again? He said, my 100% is not as powerful as 1,000 people's 1%. I said, what does that mean? He said, I can give 100% and that's it. But he said, if 1,000 people in my team give 1%, that's 1,000%. That's much better than my 100%. And he had been in the same thing. Individual sports transferred into business, and then he had to realize that 1,000 people's 1% was much more than his 100%. And he was bald, he had no education, and he made more money than a brain surgeon. He just adapted really well.
I love that story.
If we took all of your knowledge, knowing what you now know, and you were starting a business, what would have you done differently?
Yeah, I would have spent more time trying to understand the staff and not trying to do it all myself, and get them to understand them more, to get them to buy in a little bit more earlier to the journey. And it's basically your point that you just made.
I thank my client. His name's James Lavelle, and I'm so glad he said that to me, because I remind my clients of his story, and he has 15,000 people in his team. He lives in a 7-bedroom house. He drives a Range Rover. He drives a Porsche, and he doesn't actively have to work in his business. But he said, Daniel, it's not a magic formula. You just got to understand that if you can build a big team and everybody contributes 1%, he goes, you'll be more than fine. You'll live in a stately home like mine. And so he had wonderful advice.
Now, nice. I've written that down.
Yeah. I'll send you a copy of the recording, and we can both play it on repeat.
Yeah.
Now, before I let you go, 5 questions for you. What frustrates you the most in life?
Just answered it. I think it's when people don't apply themselves to their full ability.
And for you, what's been the most embarrassing moment, either in sports or in business?
Too many to count, but going into a yoga class because I thought it was supposed to be a good thing for me, arriving late because I was coming from work, setting up my mat at the front of the class, there's only a spot left, and slipping straight over, getting horizontal, landing flat on my back in front of the whole class. I rolled up the mat, just walked back out again. That was it.
And what one book has had the most impact on you?
Do you know, I was thinking about this, and I'm reading it right now. It's Breath by James Nestor, and I've already recommended it to 3 patients in the last 3 weeks, and it's all about the science, the forgotten art and science of breathing correctly, and it's life-changing.
Incredible. I'll look it up for sure. Now, as you've grown your business, as you've gone through your sports career, what one mental or emotional block has held you back the most?
That's fear of success by a mile.
And if anybody was having a fear of success, what advice would you share with them so they could break through that?
Yeah, I'm still working on this one, but I'm trying to surround myself with as many successful people as possible, to take comfort in and see how they behave and reconcile that they're okay with their extraordinary success, and that hasn't changed them as a person.
Incredible. Ladies and gentlemen, Andrew Wind, well done in the hot seat.
Thanks, Daniel.
My pleasure. Well, thank you for taking your time out. I know you're a busy man. You've got multiple businesses, and there's just so many nuggets of gold there for other business people who are aspiring to launch their own product or their own service. And I'd encourage you to go back through here and extract the valuable content in here, because there is so much. Andrew, it's a pleasure. Congratulations to you and all the other Melbourneites. You're free. Get out of jail free. Away you go.
Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time to speak to me tonight.
My pleasure. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us today, and I will see you tomorrow, 3 p.m. in Taiwan, 6 p.m. in Australia. Ciao for now.